Are we ready, Ron? Nick?
Yeah.
Okay, Vermeil, go ahead and start recording, please.
We're started anew. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. It is Sunday morning, a little after 11 a.m., the 5th of February. And we'll get started with our session with questions and answers, questions and comments on anything that you may have seen this week or even on Nick's lesson. I just finished listening to the video no more than 10 minutes ago, so I didn't have this to look up, have time to look this up. But Nick talked a little bit about the age of Pisces ending and we entering into Aquarius and made reference to the water part of that. And I'd like to hear more on that part of it and what was the age of Pisces that we came out. So that's one question, and then we'll go from there. So Nick, I'll give it to you.
Ron, this is Angela. Can I ask a question before you go to so this kind of, it's something that we talked about, but it's a little different.
Yes, ma'am, of course.
The two examples that you gave about, I think that was last week, about balance, and you used the two relationships where you was talking about balance, and then I think Pastor Richard was saying that it's not, balance has nothing to do with being equal, not as far as relationship, being in a relationship with somebody, but I'm talking about individually. Equal. So I keep seeing it as equal. I really don't have a clear, but I see one had righteous intentions of doing the right thing, and the other's intentions wasn't right, but still trying to understand what balance, because I still think if balance, it equals out, and I just need more clarity on it.
Okay, and anyone else want to help me with this, please feel free. As a matter of fact, we were talking about Luke 14 and opportunity arises this week, maybe Monday, or if nothing else comes up. I like to revisit that. I see something else in it, but balance is not equal the way we think of balance. We're talking spiritual here. It doesn't mean that I have 100 pounds in my right hand and I need 100 pounds in the left hand to balance that, to bring balance to it. We were looking at it spiritually from the perspective of masculinity and femininity becoming one. And what we were showing is that there is no creativity, there is no spirituality, there is no growth without embracing femininity. And in one example that I gave, the young man was full of testosterone, and he's just there was no balance there. He was manipulative. He was abusive in a way. So there was no he had no concept of what spirituality was. As a matter of fact, he is even today an extremely religious man, but he has no idea of what that looks like. The other example was the young man was speaking with his fiance, and she had been saying some things to him that he did not hear. I don't think he ignored her, but he did not hear. But for whatever reason, this particular day, he heard her. And he said to me, I sat down and I looked at her. And that said to me, anyway, he saw something that he had not seen before. And he started to hear her. And he as she's talking, he's talking to himself. And he says to himself, this is what I've been looking for. I'm looking all around, which also says something to me, but that doesn't matter. But he's searching for something that he already had. And when he recognized it, he said, oh my goodness, look at this. Yeah, you're right. Everything you said is right. tell me what you want to do. How can we make this right? Do you want to go to counseling? Whatever you need to do. So he recognized the balance that he was looking for, the thing that he needed was right there before him, and he was about to blow it. So that was the difference between the two that I saw. It was a good example to me of the masculinity, and I hate this word because it sounds kind of less than, and we beat it up so bad, but he became submissive. He lowered himself and lowered that masculine attitude that he had and said, you know what? I don't care what it costs. This is what I want. I want to be one with this woman. So whatever it takes, I'm willing to do. That was the balance that I was hoping to find. And I think I may have added confusion when I brought in the other example, but I was doing a contrast between the two because the both of them were extreme examples and situations that I had witnessed, but they probably shouldn't have been introduced together. It brought a little confusion. So does that help, Angela, or can somebody else have another example or talk about that a little further for me, please?
I was going to ask a question. So is the evaluating of oneself is it going within yourself and evaluating, not putting yourself down, but just looking at it from a different perspective? Because I don't know if you can. Are we able to tell whether we are balanced or what balance looks like? But it's your desire to become balanced or be balanced.
Your desire has everything to do with it. What we're doing on this phone, if you think about it, we started from the concept of religion and not knowing a whole lot about, not even hearing the word balance or being familiar with it. And because of our desire, it went from search to search, and we all, again, using the word submissive, we threw everything in the ring and said, this is what we have. This is what we're starting with. And we want to know what truth looks like. So we submitted ourselves to the process of finding truth. And what we found in that is this nasty masculine attitude that the world has is not leading us anywhere. And so what was the answer to that? And that's what got us to where we are now, looking at what balance is. Balance has nothing to do with physical strength or anything that's worldliness at all. It has everything to do with finding yourself on the inside. It has everything to do with desiring to know what truth is. And then if you look at it from a physical perspective, being with someone or becoming one with that person, as the young man said, no matter what it takes. And that, yes, there are clearly defined roles for the man and the woman, but the masculine and feminine energy becoming one supersedes that. So it's not one bossing the other one or being in, or the head of this or the head of anything. You do whatever it takes to make your relationship work. And that was the example that I saw, because the young man that I'm telling you about, he doesn't even go to church. The second guy who said, I'll do whatever it takes, they don't even go to church. But it was something that he saw, and that to me was spiritual. There was nothing else that could have been but spiritual for him to come to that conclusion. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that I'm answering it for you. If anybody else can help with that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I can help with that. I think a good way to think about balance is just harmony, peace, and stability. So anything that causes disharmony, anything that causes or threatens peace and stability is something that is out of balance. And as Ron said, it's balance is a good word for it, what we are talking about, but it's not a 50% of one thing and 50% of another. Like in movies or popular culture, you might hear about the balance between good and evil, so to speak. But that's not necessarily what we're speaking about, because there doesn't need to be 50% evil, 50% good, so to speak. That which is good is in balance. That which we might call evil is out of balance. And it's about learning how to heal those things that are out of balance, about learning how to bring harmony to those things that are out of balance, whether they are within us, whether they are in our environment, wherever we find them. And that is a good way to think about what that means, I think.
That makes sense.
I have a question though. When you think about imbalance on a global perspective, I think, yes, we need to find ways to bring that into balance. But from a local perspective, I think sometimes we need to stir things up or bring some imbalance so that things can move toward balance. If you see what I mean? Because if you can't, there has to be a way to call things out so that they can, so that those situations can then move toward balance. But is the calling out imbalance?
In a way, the caller outer, the accuser, Shaitan, that is the function of that role of spirit. The thing that puts obstacles in your path because you are not supposed to be on the path unconsciously. It is the call to catalyst, or it is the catalyst. It is the the spiritual instigator. So
Okay,
I'll give you.
so you,
go ahead.
sorry, so you have to have that spiritual instigator to call things out, to bring them into balance?
If you want to get things moving. Otherwise, things take a lot longer. And, it's just part of our, whatever we have collectively decided to experience in a way, determines how much of that I think we receive or are allowed to go through. But on a purely spiritual level, I was just looking up the concept of the devil or Satan as it's represented in the Bible and related to in relation to something I'll speak about today. But and we've always said that is really translated to the accuser or adversary, and I think that is the function of that aspect of the Creator. The being with the stick that pokes you so you don't get too complacent.
I see working, as Nick has said, with the stick. I also see that we are the instigators. Without us being instigators, we would not see those things that need to be changed being revealed to us. So being an instigator is neither right nor wrong. It depends on the reason for you being an instigator. Are you an instigator because you want to keep the status quo, or are you an instigator because you want to seriously bring balance to humanity? Does that help?
Yeah, it does help.
Well, isn't it Sorry, Ron, go ahead. It's Richard.
Well, I was thinking about Audra's question, and I see something. Last week, we had a hard time looking at wedding, the marriage, and that's what I think I see now in that chapter, Luke 14. But I went back and looked at something that's interesting to me. If you were a mechanic and you've never put a car engine together before, and you got all these parts, you lay them out to see what fits together, almost like a puzzle. And laying them out can either be helpful to you, or it can further increase your confusion. So you maybe take different parts of the engine and put them together in this part before you start putting things together, still having 100 parts laid out. But isn't that sort of what the Creator did? We call this thing the fall. He opened up the energy and said, this is what is in you. This is everything that is in you. All the animalistic thoughts, all these things are in you, all the trees. And pay attention to this one, because this is your energy. It is masculine and it is feminine. Now you put it back together. You pull this back together. And what man did, he caused chaos. And what he showed was, this is the dysfunction of how this works. This is how it looks out of balance because I don't understand it. So when you look at it from that perspective, and even putting the man to sleep, the sleep says this. The sleep says that externally, you won't be able to find that this way. Your journey has to start internally. You have to see where you are, and you have to make these changes. So all this chaos that you have started, you don't fix it from the outside. You can only fix it from the inside. So when you deal with all of this, when you understand and understand who you are, and the rest of the unfolds that, we make Adam and Eve into rock stars because they were the first people the Bible talks about. But that same energy that is Adam and Eve is also Abraham and Sarah. It is also Isaac and Rebekah. And everything you see in the scriptures talks about that same energy. The only reason the names have changed because it's different functions. But it's all a part of who you are. You are that energy. We are that energy. And so the chaos is something we have always dealt with, but we have taken that understanding of who we are, like the young man did, and say, you know what, whatever it takes, do I need counseling? We have taken that energy, looking at it from an internal perspective, and we are piecing it all back together. And we're seeing who we are. So that word balance seemingly came out of nowhere as we were piecing this thing together. But it adequately describes what we are doing and who we are and what we see in that process. So we are growing the understanding and the awareness of that energy, and understanding that this thing we call the Bible is really just a blueprint. It's a play, if you will, and it almost sat there for thousands of years, daring somebody to fill the role of the parts, and that is what we're doing. So that to me kind of sums up where we are and what that imbalance and how that imbalance got started and why it looks so confusing to us.
Well, if I may, I was going to say what came to my mind was something along the lines of the prophetic tradition. And the essential ingredient there, and I know in my own life, we use the term speak truth to power. In my own life, there have been several occasions when I've not said things because I realized it was to draw attention to myself, not the furtherance of what I thought was a truer or better understanding of the situation. So again, with intention, I that's the notion I get in my head.
I think that's a very powerful observation of self. Realizing the times when you are saying something to draw attention to yourself versus saying something that's going to be beneficial to everyone. That in itself changes the trajectory of our life from being selfish to a place of being, of recognizing rather that the unity that we have with each other is more important than the individual. Thank you.
So it's the selfishness that creates the imbalance so it's motivation basically that creates the imbalance. Even if you think you're calling out for altruistic reasons, but if you truly know in your heart that you're just seeking attention for yourself, then that creates a kind of imbalance, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And that is so prevalent in the leadership in the church, wanting to be self-attention and not allowing anyone else to add to the discussion, or not allowing anyone to raise questions about what has just been presented. So that's the absolute truth about that, because when you look at the journey that speaks about Jesus, the energy of Jesus, what it talks about, what it shows us, is that regardless of what you think you are in terms of spirituality, you have an obligation to address the questions that are raised, and at the same time, you have an obligation to hear others what they believe, and have an obligation to have others become an intricate part of the conversation. And I do believe that the reason we are where we are is because not only are we poised to entertain questions, we are also open to add into anyone, add into the conversation that will bring understanding to the wisdom that we're searching for. Thank you.
Let me just say one little final anecdote or addendum to what I said. It doesn't mean that what wanted to be said wasn't important or useful, but it wasn't going to be heard if the way it was said was selfishly presented. So in the case one or so cases I was talking about, I had to just shut up, be quiet, and think about why do I feel this needs to be said? And if I could find the truthful way, then I would find another way to say it. If not, I'd just be quiet. So it doesn't mean the message is wrong, although you would probably say it in a way that would not attract people to to understanding it and accepting it. So again, it's intention.
Absolutely.
Okay. Angela, does all this help?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Anyone else? Well,
hey, this is Rainia.
Hey, Rainier.
Hey, so I didn't hear the first part of the conversation, but I did hear about being a stir-upper. But I was watching this show last night. It's kind of a documentary on tourism and kind of how it continues to perpetuate poverty, typically in the areas where people tour. And I was just wondering, we talked about speaking truth to things, but I'm wondering about our actions too, because one of the things they talked about in that documentary was letting your money kind of vote, right, to transform that industry. And I think we often do things, because I used to be a tour agent, so I'm definitely part of that. We often do things that perpetuate some of these things without really understanding the true extent of the impact. And they also talked about how voluntourism in some countries would create these orphanages where kids have parents, but they put them in the orphanage because they got more tourism dollars having people come and volunteer to teach and spend time with the kids, and kind of it creating this zoo culture for humans. I don't know. Anyway, I just wondered how much of what we're talking about deals not with just saying something, but with some of our actions as well. So that's my question.
Randy,
Anyone?
quite clear on your question. Would you repeat it, please? A part of your question.
Yeah, I was asking really how we're talking about what we say and stirring things up with kind of that. But what about our actions, like this idea of using our dollars locally when we visit, or getting to know the families that are there, and not doing it in the commercial way that is often a big part of tourism. You have a package and all the money goes back to the ship or to places outside of that locale. This is just an example, but the example is being a lot more thoughtful about how we are, I don't know, taking part in stuff that we don't question before, that shifting change. I know I never questioned this very much until I saw that. So how do you even start to do that, not just in spoken things, but in your actions? Does that help clarify the question?
I've got an example. I'm not sure. You can let me know if it speaks partially to your question or not. But for instance, the last cruise we took, and we've been doing this throughout the years. We don't necessarily get the cruise package on the ship. We get off the ship, and then there are lots of people there, lots of locals willing to take you around and show you around. And we did that. And that's when we got more insightful information from their cultural perspective about what has happened to their world than the quote unquote box official presentation that people have to give you when they are working for someone else. And that's when we were able to see more authentic, if you will, portions of where we were. Thank you.
Yeah, that helps to speak to it. I guess it's just that knowledge of, that change is what we talk about, but it's also what we do, and those things that we can do to be that change. Because even the change for us in our ecosystem or our commerciality is to do kind of what you just described, Mom, is being more thoughtful when we travel, in my example. But my example is just an example, really.
Well, Raina, this is Audrey. I think when we talk about motivations and intent, and we're always saying, like, when we put things in the macro, we put things in the macro so it can influence people's thoughts. And actions result from thoughts. well, sometimes for some people, the action comes first. But any person who is it's developing their spiritual self, I think will basically the thoughts come first and then come the actions. So if you change people's thoughts by informing them, by helping them to understand, then I think the actions will change. But it has to be something that that is the antecedent to the action, I think, anyway. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I agree that we need that our interactions with others speak volumes as to what we believe. Because my firm belief is that whatever is inside of you, regardless of whether you think before acting or not, whatever's in you is going to come out. Meaning that if your journey towards spirituality and understanding who you are genuine, then there will be a different interaction with those people who don't agree with you or who don't even know what's going on in terms of spirituality. However, if your belief system is predicated on religion, then that's going to be your reaction, and you're going things like I'm blessed and highly favored, or the devil is a lie. Those kinds of things emanate from the depth of our beliefs, as opposed to we're not opposed to anything really, but those two things that governs our lives, and it also gives us, and tells us rather, how that we are to interact with all people, even though religion says we are not. So if you're deeply religious and you're coming from that point of view, then you don't interact with people who are drunk, with people who are on drugs, with people who the church calls street people or the worldly folks. Spirituality is just the opposite of that. You interact with people based on where they are as opposed to where you think they should be. And that's my nickel's worth. Thank you.
Rainier, did that help?
Yeah, it helps me understand that connection between changing action and what we're doing. And I think that was really my question. So.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Okay. Nick, would you like to give us a recap before you begin, please, sir?
Sure. So welcome back, everybody. If you were here yesterday. But yesterday we talked about a bunch of things. One of the things we spoke about was the story of the feeding the thousands of people with the 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fish that I'm sure we're all familiar with from the New Testament. And I related the 5 loaves of bread to other instances where, or I'm sorry, the 7 loaves of bread. Relating that concept to the other instances of the number 7 and the, oh, you know what? Was it 5 loaves or 7 loaves? Does anybody remember that off the top of their head?
We said 7 yesterday, but I can't remember.
But it's actually 5.
7.
I think it was 5.
But
Oh, okay. That word. In case that was confusing yesterday. If it was the number 7, it comes from the total number. The 5 loaves and the 2 fish. I don't know why I made that mistake yesterday, but then we looked at the number 7 as it relates to the significance of the energy centers of the body known as chakras in the Eastern system, and it gave examples of how those are found throughout the Bible. The number 7 being related to the completion of the spiritual path, in a sense, or at least the completion of the need to experience the lessons that are present in this physical material experience. There are others to learn, of course, but 7 is the sort of mastery of self, a degree of attainment of knowledge and spiritual growth and awareness of the self that frees you from the need to participate in some of the lessons that the physical or material experience is designed to give us. And we talked about, once again, the concept of that fire of desire. And I gave the example of, in the Old Testament, Moses raising up a serpent so that the Israelites who were bitten by the fiery serpents would live. And I talked about that story and how that process of raising up the serpent is related to the Kundalini serpent of Eastern spiritual tradition, and is sort of mentioned very clearly in the Bible in several places, and how that can be described by your sort of internal drive, your internal desire, when it is sort of pointed inwards and upwards, so to speak, towards spiritual things, and it begins to unlock, or you begin to engage these aspects of yourself as you become aware of them, then that desire begins to unlock these parts of yourself. That desire begins to activate these different parts of yourself. And these different parts of yourself are represented by the number 7, as I mentioned, in the chakra system. In the book of Revelation, that number 7 is all over the place. The 7 churches, 7 lamps, etc. That is also a reference to a concept similar to the chakras in the Eastern system. It is the centers of energy that makes up the physical and spiritual body. The physical body being a product of the spiritual body. And so when these centers of self are understood and balanced in the way we've been speaking about balance today, then it allows for greater awareness of spirit and of self to influence your thinking, to quite physically transform your body, and has many, many other spiritual effects and physical effects, etc. But it is the process of raising that serpent, as is mentioned in a few places in the Bible, which is where I'll pick up with today. It's that process of raising the serpent, of turning your desires upward and inward towards spiritual things, in a basic sense. That is the process of enlightenment. That is the process of spiritual growth. And that's what we spoke about yesterday, and I've been sort of speaking about for a couple of weeks now.
Nick, let me just throw in there, it was 7 loaves.
Oh, good. Okay, so I didn't completely make that mistake yesterday. Yeah, I did mention 7 loaves yesterday. But all of those sort of veiled and parable-like or allegory-like stories are representative of these spiritual and metaphysical truths. And that doesn't just mean they are stories. There's a lot of examples of things that are allegory, but there are examples of things that are both in the Bible. But the point of it is always to help you recognize something that is within yourself. And continuing on from where I picked up yesterday, or where I left off, I think yesterday, I want to give another example of the concept of raising the serpent. And I think I may have mentioned this at some point in years past, but it's John in the New Testament, John chapter 3, verse 14. And this is me in the New American Standard Bible, but John chapter 3, verse 14, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. And I think it's very significant to see that there, because that concept precedes probably one of the most popular verses quoted from the New Testament, John 3:16. And I want to use that as an example to show you the difference between what is presented in sort of the religion of Christianity at large versus the spiritual and more esoteric and inner meaning of what is presented here. So John chapter 3:14, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. And that's Jesus speaking there. John 3:16 is, of course, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. The process of lifting up the serpent, or in this case, lifting up the Son of Man, is the process by which we, that all conscious beings, achieve salvation and gain eternal life. And this eternal life is not the somewhat juvenile description of it as it is presented in a lot of religious settings, not just Christianity, but it is not eternal life in the sense that, oh, you are assigned to the heavenly realm and you get to just, I don't know, sort of walk around in the heavenly realm for forever. This is the life of the spirit that, how do I describe? It is drawing near to the source of life so that you no longer stumble into the realm of death. It is no longer having the need for this, in part, this physical material experience, because this is a place of learning. And after you've achieved this number 7, so to speak, you don't necessarily need the lessons that are here. And in so doing, have taken yourself out of the cycles of death and rebirth, also called reincarnation, as it relates to our physical material experience. We keep coming back here to keep learning.
Nick.
Yes, sir.
The scriptures themselves all give us an idea. Another idea tells us what eternal life is in John 17:3. And this is eternal life, that they might know you, the only true God, and Jesus the Christ, whom thou hast sent. So it is the interaction or the intimacy with knowing that you're Elohim, as well as knowing the teachings of deliverance. That in itself is eternal life, as opposed to, as you stated, the elementary understanding of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or reactions to what we've said so far?
Nick, I've always understood at some point, and it's rather general. In history, and when I to the extent I did, I studied a little bit of Buddhism or what have you, and maybe of others. If people have attained a certain level of enlightenment, they still, some have chosen to come back, so to speak, to lower levels, if you like, and work with others. How does that, is that option there? So in other words, you're always on your way up, so to speak. You can choose to continue or to return to help others. Is that not, is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think we all have that option. And at some point, I think it's likely that we will all choose that option in some lifetime in a galaxy far, far away, if not this one. And
That, but for clarity, Nick,
mhm.
those who may not understand or never are talked about this idea of reincarnation because of coming out of religious settings. Reincarnation is mentioned in the scriptures when Jesus is asked, who do men say that I am? And the response is some say that you are Isaiah, some say that you are Elijah, etc. Some say that you're Jeremiah. So that in itself is speaking to the concept of reincarnation. And the reincarnated, to me, what I see in that is a recognition of what we call what that child has been here before, because that child knows things that have not been taught to them, etc. So this whole idea of reincarnation has been banned by religion, regardless of which one it is, but it is very strongly spoken of in the scriptures. And I wanted to make that observation because I also see it being an energy source that has that is not simply a return of that individual. When it says some say that you're Elijah, some say that you're Jeremiah. Some, so what I see in that is the energy of Jeremiah, the energy of Elijah or Isaiah. Those energies are seen in the teachings of Jesus, meaning that if you understand not only Elijah's name and what it means, and you also have to understand what the actions that was taken based upon that energy did or offered to mankind. The same being with Jeremiah. It is then that we understand it with a greater clarity of what reincarnation looks like. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. And let me add, if any of these concepts seem foreign, that makes sense because they are not spoken about in religious settings for the most part, because religious settings essentially interpret literally and do not attempt to extract spiritual reality from these concepts. And that is why there's a lot of potential for confusion and negativity, etc., to enter those kinds of settings. And Dad, just to finish that concept of the Buddhism where the Bodhisattva comes back, there's no there's no stream you get caught up in that you are tossed around by. There's not like a it's not like you have no choice at some point. It's always the choice. It's just the place from within ourselves that we make the choice. We may or may not be fully aware of in terms of where we find ourselves.
Nick, I have a question. So
Yes.
based on the concept of coming back and the choice, where do the ancestors who have gone before us, how does that fit into what you all are saying now?
Good question. And there are many, many layers and concepts that go into understanding that. But basically, when we leave this physical plane, there are many sort of layers and realms, etc., that we may find ourselves gravitating towards based on our own, based on who and what we are, or our own understanding and experience, etc. Basically, we go where we want to go, essentially. And so there are realms wherein the ancestors may gather for a time before moving on to other places. There are, and before I, just to give a bit more context for this understanding comes from my own experience, from a variety of books that I read that resonate very deeply with things that I have experienced, and ultimately comes from my own investigation into the nature of my own self and experience. And I will say, regardless of what I say or anyone who is teaching here says, you are not obligated to immediately take it as true. That which is true is something that you must learn to investigate for yourself. And therefore, and then you will not have to wonder whether it is in that way. But I say that just to say, because a lot of these concepts can seem foreign, and a lot of these concepts may be strange, which is totally fine. Just be aware of it and continue to know your own self. And you can make the determination as to the reality of these things. That said, I am in no way attempting to lead anyone astray. So what I say, I believe, and it is based in my experience. Okay, back to the question. There are, I said, realms that we can go to that are sort of temporary gathering places. There are realms that may appear as echoes in some way of things that occurred in the physical. And when we talk about the ancestors and sort of where the ancestors go, or where they are when we call upon the ancestors or want to pay respect, it could be a variety of places, quote unquote, that we are thinking of or sort of instinctually reaching out to. But the place from which beings, all of us, incarnate, or are the spiritual realm from which we come, is similar in the sense that it is near to this one. But there are many places, quote unquote, to go in the afterlife, is the term we're most familiar with, probably. The heavenly realms have many mansions, and there are many rooms in those mansions, that kind of thing. But during the process of return, we sort of come back through the funnel, so to speak. Now, ancestor reverence or worship, or whatever version of that practice, there are, shall I say, differences in the quality of the vibration of that practice. the ancestors are to be respected and their wisdom heeded. They are not to be worshipped, nor do they need that. But overall, generally, it depends on exactly the nature of that experience when we are calling on the ancestors or wondering about where they went. Does that help answer the question?
Well, it does, because we've always said that they are not behind us, they're ahead of us, like clearing the path. So even when you mention the word vibrations, when we are choosing to return, we are not vibrating at a lower frequency at that point, I'm assuming. We're still in a different, a higher level of vibration, even when we're choosing to return. And I'm just still not quite sure. I see what you're saying, but I'm still wondering if they're going ahead of us, kind of opening pathways for us to walk in to help us identify who we are. I'm just still needing a little bit more how are they vibrating, because
okay.
If I'm choosing to come back, if I've been at the highest level of frequency of vibration of walking into who I am, and then I choose to come back. So I'm not quite clear on that yet either.
Yep. When we come back, or when anybody incarnates, you are taking on lower vibration out of necessity, because that is what this place is relative to the other spiritual realms that are present in the overall structure of reality. Out of necessity. When Jesus came here, he took on lower vibration. When Buddha did the same, when every female and every woman who was a spiritual adept did the same thing, they did the same thing. It is all, you cannot come here without taking on a particular vibration that is similar to what is here.
Right. May I give some example of that?
Yes.
When I was in Haiti, doing one of the times I was in Haiti, I went up to Gonaïves, and I spent a lot of time there talking to a lot of the elders. And when they talked about how Toussaint Louverture freed Haiti, with Haiti was the only successful slave rebellion in the world. What they told me was in the center of Gonaïves, the elders came together and they reached out to the ancestors for direction. And in the midst of that, the elders directed them as to what to do in order to complete what had been started, and that is an overthrow of slavery in Haiti. And during that period, even though Toussaint Louverture was in a dungeon in France, he appeared in the midst of the ancestors, giving guidance to the direction that they should take. Now, as to the idea or the reality, really, of them being in front of us, what we have been taught is that the future is coming behind us. However, that's Western thought. In the East, the past is in front of you. So those who have transitioned before you are in front of you, and those who are to come in the future are behind you. So that the idea of clearing the pathway is true. In addition to that, those who are in front of us also give us understandings that we otherwise would not get. And the reason those understandings are offered to us is because they do not want us to make the same mistakes that they did. And there's no doubt in my mind that that the ancestors are guiding us along the way. And when we talk about the ancestors, we have to keep in mind that knowing that we are Elohim, those who are our ancestors are also Elohim. And it is from them coming into a totally clear understanding of what it means to be Elohim. So that in itself speaks to the direction and guidance that they offer. And the vibrations are lower because we are back into a physical body, and those vibrations are lower than the vibrations are when we are pure spirit. And keep in mind that the difference between someone who is a serial killer and someone who is searching for truth is the level of vibration. The lower your level of vibration is, which means that the lower that your level of being one with the universe or being one with our Creator is, the more brutal you usually are. And the ability to boil somebody in grease or to drag someone to death and take souvenirs from a lynching, cut someone's finger off as a souvenir, means that you are functioning at a vibration or a sense of being one with our Creator that's lower than humans who are vibrating at a higher level, which means that your consciousness, your awareness of compassion and empathy are non-existent in you, except you personally, which means that your compassion and empathy are selfish and has no influence on you when it involves people who don't look like you. Thank you.
Okay, I get the vibrations now. But based on what you just said, you raised another question for me. So when we speak of ancestors and reincarnation, I've always thought in the sense of that is taking on a physical body and coming back into this realm as whomever, whatever. Okay. But as far as ancestors, I always have thought of that as those spiritual beings that remain vibrating at a higher frequency to kind of direct and guide us. But if I heard you correctly, are you saying that all ancestors are reincarnated? Or did I misunderstand what you said, Pastor?
I can help with that too. No, they're not all reincarnated, and there are many who do not need to come back that we can still draw on, that we can still reach out to for wisdom, guidance, etc. But as we just said, just to finish the earlier point, when you choose to reincarnate, you must take on the vibration of this realm, which is lower, quote unquote, relative to where the spiritual place you've come from. However, if you have gone through the process of learning the lessons that are meant to be learned here, if you've gone through that, there is a greater capacity to remember, to recall the nature of those higher vibrations that you have experienced. And so it is much, much more likely that you will learn to develop those much more quickly after you have chosen to incarnate. And incarnation, I mean through the tradition, the process of entering a body that is made for you as a child, etc., and being born. So there's still always that connection to other aspects of self. And if we have experienced the process of learning and growth, we will always be able to draw on our own remembering of that experience. And there are always those who remain, so to speak, in those other realms that we can draw on for guidance as well.
I have a question.
Thank you. That clears it up. Thank you so much.
I have a question.
Yep.
In regards to what Kathy was asking about the ancestors, my question is, the ancestors who go before us, they're vibrating at a higher frequency than we are. But if we are on a spiritual path and seeking truth, don't we have a connection with them based on the fact that they were our ancestors? Don't we connect with them in that regard, and get guidance from them too because of that connection?
Yes.
And does that have anything to do with the great cloud of witnesses?
I believe so. But let me say, yes, having done it already, it becomes easier for us to do it. So they put in the macro, they put in our sort of energetic environment, the pathway or the blueprint that we have the ability to draw on, in the same way that we are attempting to put things in the macro, quote unquote, while we are here having these discussions and doing the spiritual work that we realize we need to do. That,
yeah, I think even though they didn't know as much as we think that we do, they are part of the creator now, so they are all knowing, and in that way they help us because of our connection to them, they help us get to a higher vibration, even though we might have thought they were at a lower vibration then when they were here on this plane, but now they are able to give us guidance and help us see truth because they are all knowing now.
yes.
I think I
Go ahead.
no, I guess when the question was asked, the thing that popped in my head was seeing a tree root. In a tree, you have as much underground as you have above ground, and both of them are active. They're doing the same thing, tree to grow and bring life to it. The action might be different, and that's kind of how I see the ancestors. They never lose that sense of connection, and it is no matter where they were when they were in the earth, that desire never ceases. So that connection is always there. And
Ron, you breaking up.
Okay, can you hear me? Is this better?
Yeah.
I heard you
Okay.
fine.
Now, yeah, I was just saying that the desire is what keeps the connection there. So even though they may not have had as much awareness of be even had an opportunity to learn to read and write, they had a strong faith, and it's that desire to understand who they are that keeps us. So, they don't, in that regard, to me, all would have to come back. We're all still one and the same, working for the same cause. So that's just kind of how I saw it. And even speaking to the higher frequency, that is being fed to us as we are able to understand it. We probably cannot, gain awareness being in the earth from frequency, but we can understand what we understand in time. So I like I said, I see it as a tree that is connected, the ground being the base, but as much is happening that is not seen, that is happening that is seen. So, and it's all one. I hope that made sense.
It does.
I want to add, Mom, you mentioned when the ancestors sort of leave this plane, when we leave this plane, you mentioned that they were all knowing, but I want to clarify my response. Leaving this plane and sort of exploring the other realms that we have access to does not automatically make you all knowing in the sense of the creator. Our ancestors, or those who have gone before us, know more than us, generally speaking. But there is nothing that you do not have the ability to learn here, now, in the physical, that you cannot learn in any other realm. And that is part of the mystery of the necessity to come here in the first place. Because this is the place wherein learning, growth, experience happens most quickly. And that is related to the concept of, I forget exactly where it comes from, but angels being jealous of us, that kind of thing. Although that is not exactly what that literally means, but it is a similar concept. There is a reason that we come here, and it is spiritually very valuable to come here. And regardless of where you exist in the sort of metaphysical space, the capacity to learn and grow is greatest here.
Nick,
Yes, sir.
if somebody else want to talk, that's fine.
Oh, I was just about to say quickly, and on the heels of that, adding another layer to the question that you asked, Kathy, we too now serve as ancestors as well to others. Even, for example, in your thoughts, and certainly in your sleep, dreaming, dream work, etc. Even those that you don't remember, you are also a teacher and guiding others. And when things like that happen, you too are, in a sense, when Pastor Richard mentioned the past and the future, you are ahead, in a sense, in someone else's future, directing them or helping direct them, serving as a guide also. So, and that goes to what Nick was saying, that the ancestors are the idea that they're all knowing. It's not that they're all knowing, it's just that they are, I guess, at different places. But when I say three different places, I don't mean on a binary scale. It means in something far beyond three-dimensional, just in a different space. And as Nick continues to talk about the vibration of this earth, it's as if it is more so of a focus in order to exist here. Because if one was totally in a different vibration altogether, then you would not exist in this physical reality at all. And so that's what he was speaking about when he said Jesus had to lower his vibration to be here. It's almost if you could think in simple terms, that Jesus just was moving so quickly that he had to slow down very slowly to exist in that moment of time here for, I guess, to make it extremely simple in terms of a concept. That is similar to what we do, but at any time, we can reach outside of this vibration and tap in elsewhere for information, guidance, to help growth, to help to see this existence in a different way. I'm finished.
I want to ask a question based on what you said about vibration. If you have an object that vibrates and you can see it as it vibrates, and then it begins to vibrate at a speed so fast that you cannot see it anymore, does that mean that it has become one with its environment? And if that object slows down, then you can see it again. So if that is true, then is this what happened to Jesus, or the story, the allegory that we were told about Jesus, saying that you have the option of becoming one with the universe, to the extent that you vibrate at a totally different level, meaning that when Jesus was risen from the grave, he was able to move throughout the earth without having to transport as we do by a feet, camel, whatever. Not only that, but those around him could not see him unless he willed it, which means that he slowed his vibration. He lessened his presence as being one with the universe, to the extent that he became a physical being again. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm saying. Yes, and it is the idea that it wasn't that he no longer exists when he became one with the universe, so he disappeared. It's just that because they were tuned in a certain sense. Like when you think about, I like to think of vibrations in terms of light, in the light spectrum, and what we see and how we see, versus some animals or bugs. Being able to see ultraviolet, UV, and those things. It's not that it doesn't exist anymore. It's just that you're just able to see different things from how we're tuned, and being tuned into this physical reality. In a sense, that is how our perception works as well, in terms of what we see, what we can identify. When we talk about becoming one with the universe and tapping into other things, we talk about, of course, spiritual things all the time, and spiritual going far beyond the physical. It is simply the ability to tap into other things, even with the communication that I was thinking about when Audrey kept mentioned a few times about what the ancestors may not have known, even from like arithmetic or maybe like writing, things of that nature. It's more so of a spiritual language that is all understanding, that was being spoken. No different from meeting someone who maybe doesn't speak at all, or two people who speak a totally different language, but being able to communicate with one another from their heart, something beyond an earthly language. Hopefully I didn't get too far off. I think I started with your and was addressing your question, and then I veered off a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I want to.
Please mute your phone. Thank you.
Ask Nick a question. Nick, when you were talking about our reason for our coming in the first place, if we are seeking to understand the wisdom of spirituality, so that we can become as our Creator is, then we not brought into this earth for the express purpose of raising the vibration of those who vibrate at a lower level, animalistic level, or more simply stated, are we here then to bring an understanding to humanity, and in doing so, humanity becomes one with its creator. Not saying that every single individual is going to do that, but saying that the primary purpose when we talk about righteousness prevailing, when we talk about the essence of balance, those kinds of things, are we talking about raising the vibration of the environment or the environment period?
Absolutely. And it is the relationships that we have with other people and our environment that are the biggest, let's say, catalyst for understanding that process and engaging that process of raising not only our own vibration, but everyone's. So the biggest adversary is the self that is reflected in other people. And it is understanding where the resolution in the conflict that we experience lies, that we sort of pass the test of the adversary.
But then when we talk about the adversary, then would you mute your phone, please?
Yeah, if anyone is in a car, we might be able to hear that or something.
Talking about the adversarial self that inhibits us embracing the reality that we are as our Creator is, with a responsibility of raising others to that understanding. So when we talk about Satan or the devil, we're talking about the adversarial thoughts or adversarial influences that on us that prevents us from doing that.
Absolutely. Yep. They prevent us from doing that as long as we have not yet learned how to do it in spite of that, in a sense. Because there's nothing really preventing us other than our own lack of wisdom, our own ignorance, our own selfishness that prevents us from seeing the method by which all of those problems can be overcome.
Yeah, because I was thinking about the concept of hell that you talked about. Can your adversarial thoughts really prohibit you, or would they actually be an aid to take you to a higher realm of understanding? The hell comes if you allow it to prohibit you, would it not?
Well, it certainly feels like it prohibits us, but that is the beginning of the understanding of the necessity to allow those kinds of experiences to exist. So ultimately, no, they don't. In the beginning, they will certainly feel like that.
Well, we are actually inhibit ourselves, because when I look at the religious experiences that I have encountered in relationship to others, there are always questions about a deeper understanding, and those who are responsible for bringing that understanding, they really shrug it off, or they really distort the truth about what they are saying, and they change the directions or the thought patterns of those who are seeking it by virtue of entertaining them. Does that make sense? And if we embrace the entertainment rather than continue to seek the understanding, it is at that point that we inhibit ourselves as opposed to something inhibiting us.
Mm-hmm. It's
so in essence, Nick, are we saying I guess we are, that this is all about our choices. It's all about us and the direction we choose to take.
And the desire.
Yeah.
Nick, if I can just slide in here for a second, we got a little bit more esoterically away from it, but a little earlier, what came to my mind was the question that is around us all the time, and you hear one way or another in the popular vernacular discussion of past lives. I worked with someone in Haiti, and I only mentioned Haiti, as Pastor Richard will know. It's a country of strong challenges and spiritual depths, if you like. Anyway, she was the daughter of a very senior Mason. I mean, my friend's wife was a Haitian and the daughter of a very senior Mason. And we had a couple of conversations, which I'm sorry I didn't pursue more, but she knew she had 2 previous lives. She could characterize the person she was, not by name, but by personality traits, I guess. And there's so much more to her and ever, but I'm just curious, this whole notion of past lives, a sense of awareness that you were someone before you're the one you are now here. How does that fit, truthfully or not, into this?
Good question. That is very much a part of it. So when we, the ancestors who have gone before, in some way, we are our own ancestor. We can recall previous experience and learn from that. But it's not a necessity that we explicitly be aware of our previous specific experiences, because the nature of our previous experiences sort of builds up and and sort of carries us forward in a particular direction with a particular spiritual momentum. And so examining the nature of our experience now is usually enough, but that can be very helpful. And it is certainly possible to investigate your own past experience with this physical material plane of existence.
Okay, nicely put. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Noah, if I can, if we have a few minutes. Richard, did you know her personally? How did you
Yes.
relate to her?
Well,
Yeah,
I
what was she?
worked with her husband, who was quite a character, but that's a whole nother discussion. Really nice guy. He was Dutch, and I don't know how they met exactly. I don't remember, but she was Haitian, and her father was a very senior Mason. And in fact, before they married, one little anecdote, the father took my friend out, my colleague, out for dinner. And the purpose of the dinner was he was going to explain to him what some of the behaviors of his daughter were. And by that, I don't mean she, screamed and yelled and climbed on the wall, but when she would sleep at night, a lot of times, she had a very restless sleep, and various things would go on. So he just wanted to alert him that she's not crazy, but this might be something that has to do with her sense of her connection to previous lives, if you want, or some other energy. I don't know exactly. I didn't quite understand it all, to be honest. But she was a very nice woman, wonderful woman, smart and strong. And anybody knows anything about Haiti, you can have some very difficult challenges to go through. She went through a pregnancy during a hurricane, a miscarriage during a hurricane, and she had to get in the car and drive to find a particular doctor at night. And on those roads in Haiti, it's extremely dangerous, even when there's not a hurricane. So anyway, that's the kind of person she was. But she was very clear about these past. She was aware of 2 previous lives that she could characterize. Anyway.
I remember too
Okay.
that he would tell the story about her. Sometimes he couldn't sleep in the same bed with her because she would be vibrating during the night when she was dreaming.
That's interesting to me. Yeah.
Experiences in Haiti. Matter of fact, let me say this. the greatest spiritual experiences that I have ever had visually was in Haiti. I have never experienced anything spiritually like I experienced in Haiti. And even though the Europeans have made sure that Haiti is the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere, it has not been able to diminish the wealth and the depth of spirituality that is still prevalent in Haiti to this day. And as Richard and Audrey was talking about this lady, I had similar experiences as well. But one of my major experiences was that the deeper the spiritual experiences were with the Haitians, the less that they were apt to connect with masonry as well as with gospel music because of how differently it vibrated with them. And this is not hocus pocus. This is not out in another realm. This is not outside of a box. This is the box that they live in. We are the ones who live outside of the box because inside of the box there's spirituality and spiritual acceptance. We live in a world that doesn't exist, and we have thoughts that diminish who we are personally and diminishes who we are as a collective. So I think there is much to be gleaned from the experiences of being in Haiti, but also the experience of Haitians, period, when it comes to spirituality. Thank you.
Thank you.
I certainly wouldn't go anywhere near arguing with that. Yeah. In fact, Haiti was the first place I really understood to a degree much more about voodoo than we popularly accept. It's not a negative spiritual force at all, but it can go either way. That's the truth of it. So, but very powerful. Yeah.
And that is
Well,
just what you choose to do with your spiritual energy reservoir, your desire. Which direction do you want to point it in? It's ultimately the main choice that must be made here in the physical experience, and then everything you experience as a result of making that choice is meant to encourage you in that direction.
but you all agree this is a good place to maybe pause.
This is Angela. I got a quick question I wanted to ask.
Yes, ma'am.
Our ancestors, so we don't have certain ancestors, or we just look at ancestors as not just our family members that have crossed over, but is it a broad of ancestors that we're all connected to? Or in the other part of it is, did we reach out to our ancestors, or are we already connected to our ancestors?
Two good questions.
Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
I was just going to say our ancestors are not people who were biologically connected to us necessarily. Because keep in mind that the only thing that makes us appear to be separated are our individual bodies, even though we are one spiritually. So I don't see this as being our biological relatives who transitioned before us. I don't also I don't ask the ancestors, like, ancestor, what should I do, that kind of thing. When you are in a state of meditation, you receive from the realm of the spiritual. and included in that realm of the spiritual are the ancestors. So we have opportunity to receive from them guidance, if that makes any sense to you, Angela.
Yes, it does.
Nick?
I guess my way of seeing this is it's probably maybe too simplified, but I see the pursuit of truth as being the ground or the foundation of it all. And everybody that is in that pursuit, whether it came before you or not, is an ancestor. Everybody who has that same desire to gain understanding, and would be enlightening to them to see someone in the earth that is given all to make that pursuit. So whatever can be done from past or future, wherever you are, you move in that direction. Your desire becomes one. That oneness is the tidal wave that pushes everything forward. So and so know that I think I am connected to far more than the Johnsons. That makes absolutely no sense to me. It's anybody who desires truth. It would be one with all we're trying to accomplish.
If there are no more questions, I agree with you on that. This is a good place to pause.
Pastor?
Go ahead.
Hello? Oh, yeah, I just want to clarify something so that people won't think that we were confused about when Nick was talking about fishes and loaves and things like that. That there was a place in Matthew where he fed 4,000 with 7 loaves and a few fish and had 7 excess baskets. There was a place in Matthew also, and in all of the Gospels, where he fed 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And the place with the 5 loaves, or the 5,000, took place in sort of the northern part of Galilee, so Bethsaida, Jewish type area. But where he fed the 4,000 took place in the south part of the Sea of Galilee. And 4 means physicality, so it implies that he was speaking to a Gentile group down there. So they both are spoken of by Jesus in Matthew 16, 9 through 10, when you talked about both feedings. So I just wanted to clarify that we aren't confused. It's just that it depends on which one you're talking about. And I think Nick was talking about the one with the 7 loaves and the 7 excess baskets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess before we conclude, Angela, did we help you with your question?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And this would be a good place to...
Before we close, this is Mary. So I enjoyed the discussion, by the way. So would we say Enoch operated at a higher vibration when he was no longer in the physical?
Yep.
Okay. Got it. Like it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nick, and everyone who spoke and questions, answers. Hope everyone has a great, enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget 3 o'clock, the teachers, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow afternoon at p.m. Yeah, California at 3 today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.